effectively in sports is you could be the nicest manager or coach or whatever, but if you don't win the championship, they're going to knock you. But if you win the championship, your methods start to get looked at more. So you gotta win. You always have to win. And once you win, doing it your way, that's success.
There he is.
Joel, how's it going?
Dude, man of the hour. How are you?
Pretty good. 2020 good.
2020 good? Yeah, you're in a new room now.
Yeah. It looks like you've got a new background as well.
I do. We built like a little studio out, and now we look professional,
Well, a professional, and then you grew this massive beard.
I know, right? The COVID beard. You've got some shadow going on though. Are you gonna grow it out?
I have a rule, which is I shave every Sunday. So it's Wednesday, or I guess Tuesday today. So this is my Tuesday shadow from Sunday.
So is it that you just like doing difficult things, or?
I'm lazy when it comes to shaving during this time. Like, what's the point, right? Like, I'm married, got 3 kids. I know what my life's about at this point. And I gotta actually cut my hair. That's the other thing I've got to do. But I do that every 6th week now or so. I've learned to cut my own hair. So, I'm due for that this week.
You're cutting your own hair? Like you watch a YouTube video? How did you do that?
I've been actually cutting my own hair for a little while, but not to the degree and depth that I need to do this here. You do the tune-up haircut. This is,
yes.
Now I've got to actually cut it. So I've got the wireless clipper. I do the various guards up and down, and then I have to have the wife come back and clean up the back of the neck here. And in my situation, my head doesn't actually stop anywhere in my body, so I actually just have to have her create some sort of like forest line cut on the back of my neck between the back hair.
Yeah. There you go. That's what you do. Just punch a good line in, and then you can work around that line.
That's right.
Dude, I love this. It's always great talking with you, man. Last time we were hanging out, you were like the SVP of technology, but now you're a CTO. Was that because you came on the podcast?
I think it was. It was a correlation is causation type of situation. So anyone who's thinking about coming on the podcast, get on the podcast.
Well, how has the role changed for you though?
In this situation, in this context, massively. Typically, I would say that the role I was in before was GitHub CTO, but what it was before and what it is now is very different. So let me explain. So before, when we talked, I was the SVP of technology, which in GitHub's history also meant CTO. But in that case, I ran product, engineering, security, support. I had data and infra as well. And I ran all those functions, and product design rolled up to me via product at the time. And since we've hired people for all those functions, and this is all post-acquisition. Pre-acquisition, I actually had BD and Corp Dev for a short period of time as well. But post-acquisition, we've hired a head of product, we've hired a new engineering person, new head of data, new head of infra. And I have since gone on to CTO. In this context here means that I run a small office, the office of the CTO. It's very in line with what Microsoft does in those functions. Kevin Scott is the Microsoft CTO. He has an office of the CTO. Mark Rasinovich is the Azure CTO. He has a small office of the CTO as well. So it's a little bit different than what people consider to be a traditional CTO role, but I quite like it. And it kind of gives me room to play. What I do is I focus on Horizon 3 stuff. So all exploratory, all, you won't see manifest in GitHub for probably years at this point, but it's all fun stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Because I was going to ask you about the new, like I just got the emails and all the notifications that the new GitHub CLI is coming out.
Yep.
And I was curious, not necessarily about like the details of the functionality of it or whatnot, but like when something like that happens, how much of that is on your radar? How involved are you in that?
Well, so interestingly, all of those things are still manifest from old roadmap that we put together while I was in my other role. So I know about a lot of that stuff intimately. Though there is a point in time when I start to diverge in my knowledge about what's happening on the roadmap from a detail perspective. So because of the overlap in time, I still know a lot of those things and have been pretty close to them. CLI is a good example of something though that is we had on roadmap, but the details of it are different than when I was there in that other role. So it has started to diverge a little bit as well.
So then now today you're just focused on Horizon 3 stuff?
Horizon 3 things. So the way we classify these is Horizon 2 is near-term roadmap, right? Horizon 1 is near-term roadmap. Horizon 2 is a little bit more speculative, but you should probably be getting 80% of those things right with a little bit of custom development. But Horizon 3 is probably 3+ years out. Things that just we think should exist, but we need to go figure out how to make happen.
That's awesome. So when people ask you what you work on, is it like hush hush, like DARPA type stuff, or do you get to talk about it?
I like to talk about it, but I always caveat it with we're going to fail more than we're going to succeed, because that's the nature of taking on very experimental things. And so don't expect the things I talk about are actually going to show up. But when they do, they're going to really change GitHub. So good example of this from recent history is that I would consider to be this type of stuff is the original GitHub Actions. That was a very speculative, long-term strategic thing that we kind of incubated inside GitHub for some period of time. We're looking at things like that, things that are tangential or kind of adjacent to what GitHub does today, but in new and interesting ways. And we will find ways to bring that into the current product.
Nice. Yeah, I'm always looking like out for new tools and like new features, things that are pretty cool. And I met this company called Rookout, and they actually sent me a little sticker. Right?
Rookout Labs, right? They do the
oh, so you know them?
Yeah.
Oh, so then no. All right, I got to find a different company.
Well, I think I'm pretty close to most of the things that are happening in the software space, particularly when it comes to dev tools.
Yeah, because there's some that just come out, and I was like, they had a really smart team, and then I met them, and I met their CTO, and I got to talk to Liron, and I think I'm pronouncing that right, but he was just a really smart guy. And whenever I find small teams that are doing something really interesting and really smart, I always like to help push them forward and get them out there into the world. But then I saw my producer right now just pushed a note that said, your CEO is actually an investor in that company.
Yeah. So Nat, between Nat and I think we know pretty much everything that's happening in the software space these days, and we're likely either one of us is likely an investor in one of them too. So.
Yeah. So when you saw Rookout, you were like, "This is an interesting product."
Yes. So the way I categorize what's happening in software is it's in the ideation space, the code space, the build test pack space, or the production space. And unfederated territories is in production at the moment, is the way I categorize it. So I'm on the lookout for anything that's interesting in that space. People are doing things new, different, a little bit out there, because that's where I think a lot of the innovation is going to happen in the next 5 years.
Nice. Did you get to see the it just came out on Netflix, The Social Dilemma?
I have heard about it, and obviously if you're on Twitter, you're hearing about it a lot, but I've not seen it.
Yeah, so I actually watched it, and one of the questions that I have coming out of it, just that I'm asking around for, is this concept of algorithms and echo chambers,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're all kind of familiar with that as a topic of conversation. I was just curious, have you had any like deep thinking sessions on this? Are there any interesting solutions out there? I don't have anything.
So, I mean, I think like most, I have opinion on what is happening in the social space, social media, and then algorithms in general. And you can take a couple of different views on it. I wouldn't say that I have any depth of thought specific to social media, nor expertise. But what I do have is I have a little bit of fear around it, because you see what's happening in 2020 with social media, and you worry about it. But at the same time, I think what the term is, you're a long-term optimist but short-term pessimist, and that's how I view things. And software in general has changed the world entirely in a very short period of time. But at the same time, you have that short-term pessimistic view about what will happen with it. Long-term, obviously, I think software and technology in general is going to continue to change people's lives for the good. But it's hard to reconcile or square that circle with what you feel short-term on those things.
Yeah. For me, I'm just like, I'm getting my feet wet into these conversations because I'm learning a little bit, trying to discuss a little bit, trying to wrap my mind around it because you and I have both been alive since before these things really existed. And
Yeah,
now to where they're, you have kids.
I
We
do.
talked about that last time,
Yep.
right? Yeah. So you've got your kids. I've got, I think they're older than mine. Mine are only like 3, but, these are going to be like real things happening and decisions we're going to have to make about like when they enter into these types of technologies. And so,
Well, the thing I think about quite a bit is more of at the societal level on these things. And we all know that people's opinions and information have been shaped for generations and decades and centuries based on who they hang around. So, there's that concept that the 5 closest people to your information sources are going to drastically or drastically shape your view of the world. And this is borne out in history. And I think about the power that the social media the media and the media landscape in general has had for decades, but social media in particular today. There's a reason why the Murdochs wanted to go buy a newspaper and a media outlet is because they understand that you can shape opinion based on how you present argument. Well, social media is doing that these days. No, I just recently tried to get off Twitter and you quickly find yourself in a situation where do I get my news these days? How do you do that? RSS is still around, but no one's using it the same way, and most people get their news from Facebook or Twitter or some version of social media.
I actually went and hunt through frustration. Because I'd go on the Twitter, I'd go on these things, and then you see the things you care about, but then you also see rabbit holes. They like try to pull you down. And so out of frustration for like longer form content or just more intellectual views of stuff rather than just like the scream view, I started researching and I actually found a couple like newsletters that I subscribe to. And so now like my key source are these 2 like newsletters I get every morning, which is kind of like summarize tech and business and
Yeah,
this very like direct.
I definitely think there's going to be what we may call cottage industry things popping up around the ability to get information from others in a filtered way, which also is a dangerous approach too, because then you have somebody else filtering the information for you as well. But at the same time, people aren't going to want to sift through that stuff anymore.
So how are you staying fit during the lockdowns?
Oh my goodness. That is tough. It is. I work more now, and I've been remote. If you recall, I've been remote for 10 years. I've never lived in San Francisco, and I've been doing the remote thing for quite some time. So if anyone should be familiar with being used to this, it's me. And yet I have worked more during the pandemic and COVID than I ever have, and I'm in worse shape. And it is tough. It's tough because I feel like there's this cognitive overhead. I'm a little bit more tired than I typically feel. What's that about? Um, I have been trying to do a lot more simple things, walking, eating less, um, a little bit more things that I can do on a consistent everyday basis instead of having obviously going to a gym had been difficult for quite some time. And if you live in a state where that might be slightly more open, how do you feel about going? Well, I don't feel that comfortable going, so I'm not. So things I do at home. So I do walk more, take more calls on the headset. Been doing a lot of kettlebell stuff. Trying to do things I can do in 10, 15 minutes um, because schedules have gotten pretty bad.
Yeah, it's the Wild West down here in Florida. Gyms are like fully open and packed. Yeah. But they
I,
do the temperature checks though. Like, so here's the deal. At my gym, you have to walk in with a mask on, but then once you check in, and you have to do a temperature check. So you walk in, you do a temperature check, and then if you're all good, you get to go in, and then you don't have to wear a mask while you're working out.
that's interesting. I'm not sure I would feel comfortable being inside in a place that does not have the mask mandate at the moment. Um, I To each their own, I guess. In that one,
That's yeah, I'm on the side of like freedom. And I mean, I was actually hearing this like interesting argument the other day, and it had nothing to do with mask. It was just talking about like the purpose of America. Like we came here, it was an experiment in like self-governing people, right? Like individual ownership and these concepts and these disciplines and these things that I personally am a fan of. And so when everyone seems to be so like split up, and I definitely don't like go political stuff on this podcast, but when things seem to be split, right, up, I just try to find like some really good principles that everybody can enjoy and then just like hit those hard, because when things are split, what you need is unity, right? And so it's like, all right, well, rather than figure out like how we're all so different, let's find some things that we all agree on, because we could use some of that right now.
We could use some unity in 2020, that is for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe we all direct our anger at the algorithms. No, I'm just kidding. No, we'll stick with like freedom and things that we like as people. So what are you watching? Are you watching anything interesting these days? Any good media?
You know, I don't think that I can't actually say that I've started to watch more things in lockdown. Obviously, just like in the early days of this, I think Mandalorian had just come out or something like that. I think my son and I watched Mandalorian for the first time. Of course, I started hearing about Tiger King, or it's Tiger King? That's what it's called, right?
Like, it was Tiger something.
Yeah, in the early days. So I did watch an episode or two of that, and I was like, I don't know how I feel about humanity continuing to watch this one. So, and I was there was I think didn't Bill and Ted's 3 just come out?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm waiting to see. I do want to see what is it, Tenant, but I'm not going to a theater at the moment. So I want to see if they can stream it. I will watch anything that they stream from a theater perspective at home. There was a TV show that just came out on Amazon Prime, I want to say, The Boys. Yeah, the superhero one.
Okay.
So I did watch a couple episodes of that as they're coming out, and they had a season 1 already. So I watched season 1, and then I'm watching the episodes as they come out just now. But not too much that I'm really watching these days. Oh, and then basketball came back, so I've been watching basketball.
Are there like crowds? How do they deal with that?
Basketball. They're doing a bubble for basketball, and they're down in Orlando actually.
Okay.
And what they do is that they chose a set of teams that were close to making the playoffs to start, and they said basically you're essentially self-quarantined inside this bubble, and can't leave. If you leave, you've got to quarantine inside your room when you come back for X amount of days, depending on if you got tested every day or not. And until the playoffs are over, you don't get to leave if you're still competing for the championship. And right now they're in the finals, the conference finals. So the West is playing and the East are playing, and there's 4 teams left, and they're continuing to go.
Nice. But they don't have like an audience. It's just
no, it's all streamed.
Empty.
Yeah, they do have a. I'm not sure technically how they do it. I'm assuming it's massive amount of TVs that are all kind of linked together. But they're doing a thing where audience members can broadcast themselves into the arena, the place where they're playing, and they're digitally broadcast on there. So via their home mechanism.
That's a way better solution than cutouts.
It is.
Or whatever
It's a lot more fun. You do have a lot more interesting things that happen with that. And the cutouts, they're kind of creepy. Let's just admit that.
Yes. But I think I saw the first person was Tony Robbins, because I follow him online, and he, does these massive events in person like 4 times a year or something. And he did this, like, he built this stage and this giant wall of like Zoom videos, and I was just blown away by it. And then since then I've seen like a number of other people build these studios with these walls of video of all the people on them. So that makes sense at the NBA. Was it the NBA? Yeah.
Yeah, the NBA did it. Yeah. And, football, I think they're doing the cutouts, what they're doing. No, is it baseball that's doing the cutouts? Somebody's doing some cutout somewhere. And I remember seeing a picture of it. It's like, that's sure, I get it, but also a little creepy.
Yeah. Jake just said that baseball is doing cutouts.
Baseball is doing cutouts. So. Okay. I think football is doing, nobody in the stands or anything like that, but football is pumping in crowd noise, interestingly. And so, like, if you're the home team, they're pumping in the cheers and the claps if you've done something positive, and the boos if you're doing something negative, I guess, or whatever. And I had saw something, and I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole about it, because I do like sports, but one of the Philadelphia Eagle home games, apparently one of their players did something kind of boneheaded, and they pumped in a whole bunch of booze to kind of get the Philadelphia crowd vibe going. And I thought, that is brutal. Nobody's in the stands, and somebody's making a choice here to pump in booze because of some boneheaded play that you did. It's like, all right.
See, what we need though is like on the video connections, we need like clap icons, and boo icons, and then you should generate the noise based off of what the people are actually doing.
It is kind of strange actually being remote in this environment when you're doing things like, podcasts are one thing, but I've done a bunch of, remote conferences now, and you don't have any feedback whatsoever in terms of how you're doing. And then whenever you're on stage, while there's lights and there's things that are happening, you always place people in the audience, and you're looking for head nods, or you're looking for the thumbs up, or you're kind of looking for signal. So you've got your own plants inside the audience, but you're also looking at others too, and you're just trying to see how that's resonating with folks. There is zero feedback anymore when you're in an environment like this, and it is kind of strange when you're giving a presentation.
It is very, and like when I first got into public speaking, somebody gave me that advice. They said, when you're up on stage and you're doing your like beginning, start scanning the people you can see, because you can really only see like the first like row or two. Scan the people you can see and find the person who's tracking with you. There will be a person or two that are tracking with you, and then look at them and talk to them and watch how they're going. And when I did that, I was like, whoa, this concept of interacting with the crowd is like its own part of life. It's like its own unique experience that I personally enjoy.
It's very different though in 2020 to do that. So you've got to find your own rhythm, and that's the way I kind of describe it, because you can feed off energy. Like Tony Robbins always talked about this actually way back when you're in the arena, the energy that the audience or the fans they give you, there is no energy. You've got to create your energy. You got to bring it. So you've got to bring that with you, and you've got to keep it going.
Yeah, one of my kids, they play with this guy named Luke, and Luke's like one of Tony's main guys, and he's also a speaker. So Tony like travels with a bunch of speakers that he works with. And I was over at their house, and they have like the trampolines that they use, like all Tony and all the speakers use. They jump on the trampoline backstage before they go on. So I got to jump up and down on the trampoline. I was like, okay, I'm not bringing one of these with me to my tech talks. But I see the value of like getting you pumped up. So I just put in music and read through some notes and get like Eye of the Tiger going, get pumped up,
It's the I mean, I don't think this ever goes away for folks, but there is those butterflies that you get before you go on stage, particularly for a larger audience. And I always talk about the perfect dose of caffeine when you go on stage. If you have too much, you're going to talk too fast. If you don't have enough, you're going to have the jitters. But you want that perfect dose. You want to have like just the coffee hit at the right amount of time ahead of going on stage. I can see the same thing with getting amped up.
Yeah, right. You can't do too many songs in a row. You get too pumped up. If you do Eye of the Tiger like 3 times, you're gonna be like through the roof. Eye of the Tiger one time, maybe 1.5.
The entire Rocky IV soundtrack would be fine.
There we go. Okay, so I'm curious. We were doing research, and we found some fitness books written by a Jason. Ugh. Is that you, buddy?
So that is me.
I love them. It seems like it's something from the past that you're just like, but I loved it. Like when I was reading through them, we were so excited. Our producer was like, I'm going to do a push-up for every minute of the episode. I was like, we're going to make this thing go through the evening. Hope you brought your sleeping bag.
Yeah, so my face got a little redder on this, just so you know, if you're watching instead of listening. But yeah, no, yeah. So a friend of mine did those probably about 10 years ago. We started doing them at this point. Yeah, it's been about 10 years. And I think I'm co-author on 5 of them, about 5. And he did somewhere between 8 and 13 or something like that. He went through a real spell of doing them. But he and I just kind of got into a phase where we were really getting into fitness. And he connected with a publisher, Ulysses, and we just had a series of books that they wanted us to produce for various niche markets. And some of them were what they call challenge books. So they started with Steve Spears, who did I think it was 7 weeks to 300 push-ups is where it really started. and then they, pull-ups and sit-ups and things of that nature, and adding muscle or losing weight or things like that. Those are called challenge books. And then the other ones were just general fitness books for various niche markets that they were trying to go after. And we never written books before, so we want to see what it was like, and got into doing it.
Dude, that's exciting. I mean, look, I've got some embarrassing stuff from the past. I'll throw out there just so you're not alone. I've intentionally never talked about it on the podcast, but I think this is probably a good time. So I did these like motivational audio tracks.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was called like Beast Mode Audio, and I just wrote these motivational speeches, right? Because I had heard somebody like do this on YouTube, and I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. And my brother-in-law is like a music producer, and so like he pointed me in the right direction, helped me out with all of it. But I released an album and had it on like Spotify and stuff, and I'd done this, I don't know, I think like 10 years ago, right? And I was just kind of like, okay, that was like a fun project just to see what that would be like. And it was out there, and it wasn't like on the first page. It was like on page like 20 of Google if you search for me, right?
You get a deep Google to find those, right?
Yeah, you got to go like ex-girlfriend, stalker status, like to find them, right? So then one day I'm working on this project for like this government agency thing, and I walk in, and they pull up on the conference line, and the hold music, they had found one of these tracks and made the hold music one of my tracks. And I was like, oh my God. And they all just like cracked up and were laughing. They had planned it ahead of time. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Dude, I looked like a tomato. I was so red.
That is I love that, but that is deadpan type of just make it. Oh, that is amazing.
That's like walking into the lunchroom at GitHub and everybody's reading that book.
So GitHub, they found out about it, but by the time we did the books and then my time at GitHub, enough years had passed where, the Google searches are around page 14 or something like that. And there's enough Jason Warners in the world too, where you kind of can get disassociated with time, even on Google. Their algorithms don't match it up. But when I was at Heroku, Heroku had a gym in the basement of the building on 7th and Townsend in San Francisco. And given that I was remote, I didn't see this very often. So one day I go down to the gym. Next thing you know, there's books everywhere in the gym. And I just realized like, oh no, they found these things. And there was one guy who I became good friends with who said, yeah, we just happened to think that we didn't have enough educational material down here. So it's like, you son of a...
Dude, but think about it though. At least it's not like you in like 80s attire, like skin tight, like
That's fair.
Stuff, doing some workout jazzercise video.
That is fair.
With, like hair.
There is a Jason Warner who we've gotten merged at one point. I think we've been disassociated with each other now. But there's another Jason Warner who wrote a couple of books. But this Jason Warner is a musician, but happens to be a gay Christian rock musician who wrote a book on same-sex Christian surrogacy with his partner. And yes, there's like there's a lot of things that you got to jump over to get to that one. But that person in mine came up in the same search settings. But the funny part is I became very good friends with the head of sales at GitHub, who he himself is married to a guy, and they have a surrogate son, and they went down that path. So I happened to send him one of those books, and he's like, wait a second. I was like, no, it just so happens that it's my name on the book, but it's not me. And I just thought you'd find it super hilarious. And he's like, I got super confused really quickly, but thanks for clarifying that.
Oh, I love it. That's a good one. We all have things in our past. I mean, I guess I don't even know why I get that embarrassed about it. Maybe because I tend to I see myself as someone who follows through on things and can, does things for long periods of time. And I just kind of did that as like a fun project to experiment with what it would be like. And at one point I even checked, because like I put it out there, let it a couple years go by, but I was getting like between like 10 and 15,000 plays a month on it on Spotify. So I was like, hey, it didn't, maybe it helped somebody.
I don't. There's something strange about having it out there. Particularly if you just become more well known for a certain thing, like you've gotten the podcast, and obviously my time at Heroku and GitHub have kind of put me into a sphere of influence that's weird. And then have that out there is like, oh, hang on a sec. Had I thought this through, I might have used a code name or a surname or something like that on those books. But at the same time, you just start to laugh about it at this point.
Well, it's pretty obscurified. Like when we were doing our research, we weren't sure. We weren't sure because like you can't really tell in your author picture if that's you or not. It's like a jacked guy, but like you're not looking at the camera. You're like doing a push-up or like 300 of them. But what gave it away, here's like three simple little words gave it away, and it was like lives with his like wife and so in like something British Columbia, and that same sentence was both in your profile for your author profile and your profile and your biography. It was like written the exact same way. And
Okay,
I was like, that's him. There it is.
That is definitely me. And then, yes, that would have given it away.
Dude, that's cool. I think we should write like a technology fitness book.
Maybe at some point we should do the how to stay in shape while traveling a ton for work, like a travel fitness thing. Because there's a lot of people who could probably benefit from like not screwing up your back while traveling, which is something I've experienced in the last couple of years, or hotel workouts or something like that.
That is actually, what I heard from somebody, and then I implemented it was when I land, I go to the grocery store and I stay in the hotels because I was so surprised to find this out. There's an entire like class of hotels that have kitchens in them, right?
Yep.
They're pretty much everywhere. You just have to look for them. Like none of them, like when you use your app, you're not going to get one by default. You have to go like specify and filter out and find the right ones. But I just, I go to the grocery store, get one of those types of hotel rooms, and then just keep making my food, as much as I can. It's hard. It's not easy. It takes a lot of discipline.
No, in fact, like one of the things that I did, because I do travel a ton, or I used to travel a ton, I actually implemented very strict rules when I traveled, and in many ways, actually got in better shape with more extensive travel because my rules were so rigid and strict. That I thought. Well, what I said was, when I travel, I will always work out every day. It's the first thing you do. And for me, when I woke up in the morning, I tried to find a hotel that had a pool, because one of the best ways to stay fit when you're traveling is swimming, and swimming in general is a great workout. I would always eat the same thing every day, no deviation, and I wouldn't eat out. If I went out to a restaurant, I always pick the same. I would always know the menu I'm going to eat, and I would eat the same set of things. And if I went to a hotel, I tried to put a standing order in, or stay at the same hotel, put a standing order in. So if I'm coming to there, I'd call down and say, "Hey, it's Jason. I'm in this room. I'd like the usual," and I would never waver from that. So you can always kind of guarantee, at least as much as you can possibly control in a situation like that, that you're going to get, you understand how many calories you're eating, how many grams of protein, carbs, and fat, and all that sort of stuff that you're getting, and you try to stick with it. And then no drinking whatsoever when you're traveling, and that is odd for some people, but that is the easiest way to let things go awry. I don't drink in general anymore, but when I first implemented it, was like, nope, no casual drinking whatsoever.
Yeah, I haven't been drinking since my 20s, really. Basically, it's when it started to affect me, like I would wake up and be like, oh, that I feel like garbage. And I just don't like to feel like garbage. I like to feel good. But I'm like 200, and I got a notification the other day. I'm like 270 or 280 days in to I've tracked every calorie and macro that I've eaten, weighed myself every day, and I've been working out like 5 times a week.
That's good.
So I put on about like 11. Right now I'm about like 11 pounds of muscle for the year since January.
Well, I like the fact
that
you're gaining muscle is one of those things that does take an incredible amount of time, and there's things that you can't do in short periods of time. Gaining muscle is one of those that you can't do in a short period of time, and also gaining strength. You can't gain a massive amount of strength in a short period of time. You have to be consistent, and it's actually one of those things that makes you appreciate athletes of a certain caliber, because you understand that for them to achieve a certain set of things, you have to put in the time. It's you got to put in the time consistently over a long stretch of time, with a certain intensity. Um, and it's kind of fascinating. Once you know that, you can appreciate some people's achievements more.
100%. I started making friends with people at the gym just because I'm there so much. And I was like looking at the different size people and like asking them how long they've been, consistently working out. And wouldn't you know, the big jack people have been doing it for like a decade. Like
Yeah,
they've been working out forever.
there's a obviously, if you get into like performance enhancing drug territory, there's certain shortcuts you can take, but that still does not mean you don't put in the work. Those are just, let's call them flavor enhancers. There's certain like thresholds you can get to now that are achievable for that would not be physiologically achievable by a normal human being, but you can get to those things. But I think it was someone like The Rock, I believe, said, "Hey, how do you get to look like you?" And he's like, "Simple. You just work out every day for an hour for the next 20 years. That's what you do.
Yep.
That's what you do."
Yeah, I saw it, dude. I love The Rock. I follow his Instagram. He got his gate broke the other day, like so he couldn't get to the movie shoot. So he just like ripped it off with his hands, and he
I
took like a video of it.
I like so I have two of my man crushes, and The Rock is one. The other one's Ryan Reynolds, and I've been incessantly teased about them for like 15 years. But luckily, they've both of them have entered the general consciousness for people to just appreciate. But I've liked Ryan Reynolds since he was on. There was a Two Guys in a Pizza Shop or Two Guys and Girls in a Pizza
Yeah.
Shop TV show or something like that. But The Rock and him are two of the people that I will. I think I only have Instagram these days to follow those two people.
Oh wow. Let's talk a little bit about leadership stuff before we wrap up. Is that cool?
Awesome. Would love to.
Boom. All right. So right out of the gate, I was reading this AMA, and this is actually not leadership at all, but I was reading this AMA of you, and it said that you almost tried to quit tech twice. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So I did. I almost quit tech twice. And both times I would think that either I'm not cut out for it, either from a personality perspective, or it's just too brutalistic from a leadership perspective. Like you just end up working for just jerks on a regular basis. And to be really frank, it's hard to quit tech because the money is so good. Like you just even as a programmer in the lifestyle, the money is phenomenal, and you get to solve interesting problems. But you sometimes do it for jerks. And so I remember in my late 20s is when I really started to take over engineering teams, and I realized that I could give them something I never had, which was a good leader, a good team, an approachable system, and uh, way of a job. They can get satisfaction out of it, and they can achieve things, but they don't have to be completely ground down. And I realized that, like, while I was trying to quit twice and I couldn't for financial reasons, I really wanted to make it my life's work that I would show that there was a completely different way to achieve significant outcome and do it in a different way. It's something that maybe others have been able to do, but you don't see the examples in the industry as broadly as you see kind of brutalistic examples.
And so you stayed in order to be a better leader to these people, give them.
I stayed originally I stayed one first because the money was too good. Second, so I'm just being really transparent. Like it's either that or go
That's the
become a
most
person.
useful thing you can do, man.
Yeah. And then you start to stay because you realize you can give others something you never achieved. And then you start to realize when you have some success doing it that way, I want to become that example for the broader industry. And, fast forward 15 years, and here I am, the single most important person in GitHub's history, doing it my way in a way that you want to show that is possible to do, turning GitHub around and then giving GitHub its massive success. And then you think, oh, how far could I take this? Could I show that you could do it at a Microsoft scale or a large company scale like that? And then we can just completely jettison Larry Ellison examples of the world at some point and say, yeah, that's a tactic that you can do, and it's easier to go to Larry Ellison's path. But look at Jason's way of doing it. Yes, it's harder to do, and it's a higher skill move, and you're threading more needles, but it is possible. That's what we want the industry to strive for.
Yes, and yes. 100%. When I a few years ago, I bought 3 books from billionaires because that's one of my goals. I want to bring $1 billion worth of value to the world. And I read Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson. And what I learned from listening to their stories and watching their leadership styles and everything from that was that I wanted to pick the best parts of each of those individuals because like Bezos yelled a lot and Musk had some issues too with temperament. Branson was really nice and sweet and just led with like a different culture, but then he wasn't as like technical. So I was like, all right, I want some like the technique. I just picked the best parts and I was like, all right, let's try to make that human. But yeah.
I've started to call this one of the things that I struggle with in the industry in general is that the tech industry over rewards confidence as opposed to competence. And in the long term, in the time scale approaching infinity, competence will tend to win. But in the short term, you could over reward or over signal on confidence alone. And so I have tried to show that you can be competent with some confidence. And that was the thing I struggled with early on in my career was I was overly competent and lacked confidence. And now obviously I'm at a different point in stage in my career and I have both and I still have the confidence and I've gained the confidence. But if I was younger and I had the confidence, I would say overconfidence of some people in the industry for what they achieved early on, I would have had a head start. Now, obviously I'm in my 40s and I'm doing it. But I think what you said is right. Like, don't study anyone and try to adopt anyone. Like Steve Jobs is amazing for what he is, but he was a terrible example of a leader. But he was a great product thinker and a good company builder. But he himself was not the shining example of what you should strive for uniformly. There are aspects of what he did that are amazing, but if he could have been rounded out with some of the other aspects of others, he would have even achieved more.
What's some of the best leadership advice that you've gotten, like people have given to you, you've implemented, you worked it out and you liked it?
I think that the singular best advice I got was there's two things. One is like it's a leadership neg. Like I was told that I wouldn't achieve what I would want to achieve with my style. And at that point, and it was by a terrible person, an absolute drag on society type of person who I just disliked. And that to me was the anti-advice, which is like, now I will show you type of deal. However, he was right about one thing. You have to make people money. And he said, if you can make people money in your style, then you can have success. He didn't actually say that to me. That was my takeaway. His was, if you make people money, that's success. What I realized in his statement though was you cannot have success that does not involve making people money or a company money or an industry money. And your point about bringing $1 billion worth of value is spot on. If you can bring the value with your methods and your approach, then you can have success. But if you have your methods and approach and don't have the success, you can't claim it. So that was something that I had to orient around. It's effectively in sports is you could be the nicest manager or coach or whatever, but if you don't win the championship, they're going to knock you. But if you win the championship, your methods start to get looked at more. So you got to win. You always have to win. And once you win, doing it your way, that's success.
Yeah, you can't do it like that without being a worker, like working on your craft, like understanding you got to be the personal side and the craft side.
So the thing I've said is that there's two failure modes, and too often we fall into one of the other camps. And one is you're only going to chase money or output or whatever, and you're going to burn people out along the way. And this is the camp I put Elon Musk in for what it's worth. And Elon Musk obviously is massively financially successful, and he's going to achieve that same output. But he does burn people out, and that is one variant on something. And then there's the other side of it, which is like, I will become the best people manager. I will become the best culture person. I will do all of those sorts of things. But if you don't achieve the success, this is a failure mode. Now, however, the industry is oriented towards people like Elon. Like if you achieve massive financial success and you burn everybody out along the way, we as an industry do give him a pass, or those people a pass. We do not give these other folks a pass. You cannot have the best culture and no output. There's no pass on that. So this is what my goal was, basically to say, like, I will show that you can have an approach that has massive success, and you can do it in a way that has people want to be around you. And it's not because for financial reasons, it's because they have a greater mission and vision. They understand how you're doing it, and they understand that you can achieve those sorts of things together.
I think you're outlining the book right now. Jason's tech leader book.
I will admit, I think I do think it's much harder for what it's worth, but because you have to account for a lot more things. It would be much easier just to go in and dictatorially command fiat type of methods and say, go do this or you're out of here and you're fired and all that sort of stuff. And like, that is easier to do. And maybe my approach shouldn't be done because it's harder to do, but I also don't think that I would want to be that person.
It needs to, you have to be okay with who you are as a person while getting the job done, right? Like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to leave that impression. You know, let's just be decent humans and treat other people like we want to be treated, right?
I think that the other side of it too, is I think that then you end up in a territory where it doesn't matter as long as you have the financial. So this is something else I've said too. Actually making money is not a hard problem. You could get into any of the 7 deadly sins and make quite a bit of money. And in fact, there's investment thesis around investing in sin companies, or you can do nefarious things, or you can sell arms to Saudi Arabia and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of ways to make money. But at the end of the day, what are you doing? What do you do? And so, I do fall into a camp where I go back and forth, even on myself. I said, like, maybe I should just go and work at Facebook and go do, but at the end of the day, I don't think I could actually rationalize that in my head when I'm 70.
Yeah. How do you deal with, all right, so you're doing these, like, what did you call them, level 3 things or stage 3 things?
Yeah, Horizon 3. Yep.
Horizon 3 thing. So you're doing these Horizon 3 things. So you have a team that's kind of like working on experiments. Like, how do you coach them around failure? Or does it not come up because they're of the culture?
The thing is with what I'm doing with the Office of the CTO is you've got to find a little bit more senior folks who are pretty resilient in and of themselves. Because the way I've described this is, if you're doing Horizon 1, Horizon 2, or Horizon 3, you're basically going to have different failure rates. In Horizon 1, it should be near 0 failure rate, 100% success rate, because either you understand what you're building and who you're building it for. And if you don't have that, you've not done the correct product work at that point to get to that. So let's say that's anywhere from like 1 year to 18 months out. You should understand what you're building. Horizon 2 is anywhere from 1 year to 2 year, or 1 year to 2.5, depending on the size of the company, all that sort of stuff. But your success rate there is probably going to be closer to 80%. You mostly know what you're building. You've got the customer feedback. You've done some of the co-dev with them or others in the industry to understand that you're going to have some failure, but 20% failure there should be understood. Well, with what we're doing, most of the things we're going to be doing will fail. We'll answer, this is yet another way to not make a light bulb type of situation. And I expect that we should probably fail 80% of the time. Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 should be inverted. But our successes should be massive. If we're doing something, we shouldn't be experimenting on something that is an incremental gain. It should be a monumental gain for the company or the industry. So how I coach them to think about these things, and this is why you typically need people who have experienced their own project failures in software already, is that success is answering a way to not do something. The project does not fail, quote unquote, because we said this is not worth our time. That is a success because we've told people that this is not worth our time to go do. So you almost have to reorient what failure and success is.
I love it. Boom. Jason, you're the man. We've got 4 minutes left. Anything else that we didn't get out there? I want to be respectful of your stop. So.
No, I love coming on with you all. I think I just have a good time talking. This is fun. I love your new digs. That looks great.
Thanks.
Congrats on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you have a fantastic day, Jason. We'll talk soon.
All right. See ya.